Well, I am so excited to welcome Anil Babbar to the It's Special podcast. Thank you so much for coming today.
Thank you, Tracey, for having me.
Yeah, I'm so excited to hear you speak about Guardian Watch AI. And I know that our listeners are going to be blown away by what you are doing. So let's start with talking about you and who you are.
Sure. My name is Anil Babbar, and I grew up in the Northeast, went to NYU for my undergrad, and then to Boston University for law school. Entered the world of finance for 20 plus years and came out in 2007 and have been basically working on a variety of different projects related to technology, artificial intelligence.
Fascinating. And this is the era of artificial intelligence. So you've started a new company called Guardian Watch AI. Tell us about it and how. Well, first of all, why don't you tell us what led you to start this company?
Yeah, so it's basically me trying to transform a personal tragedy that afflicted my family and most specifically my son. And trying to do some good coming out of it. My son, who is now just turned 20 years old, was at the Anderson Center for Autism in their residential school program.
And where's that located?
That's in Dutchess County in upstate New York. And he was there for 3 years. And we were informed in August of 2024, that he was being sexually abused and assaulted by a staff member at Anderson.
Anil, that's so terrible.
Yeah, and, the scary thing is that but for a whistleblower who had the presence of mind after he complained many times to management and to the house manager of the abuse that was being perpetrated on my son, he finally said he's going to take a video. And he took a video that showed one of the times that my son was being abused, and actually another resident who was at my son's place who was also being abused. But for that video, we wouldn't have probably been made aware of this incident, and B, the perpetrator would not have been prosecuted or brought to justice. So, after having this experience and seeing the horror and the torture that my son went through, the first thing that came to my mind is, A, why did this happen? And B, why is it that nobody at Anderson, tried to stop this, tried to fix this, tried to change the system there so that this type of abuse wouldn't happen again in the future? Given my work in the last 10 years in the AI space, specifically in the healthcare sector, I knew right away that AI would be a tool that could dramatically have an impact on the safety and the protection of vulnerable people. So this is why I started a company called Guardian Watch AI. And I hope the name explains what I want to do, but I want to create a objective third-party entity or guardian, basically, that can view special needs people or other vulnerable populations in their residences, in their common areas, the kitchen, the living room, the dining room, backyard, not their bedrooms and not their bathrooms, but in the common areas of their home, to be able to monitor the video feeds, to see the interactions between staff and the people at these locations, and be able to detect what we're calling anomalies.
Now, I'm just going to interrupt for a second. I am sure that most people listening to us know what AI stands for, but I just want to be clear for our audience that we're talking about artificial intelligence. Is
Absolutely.
that right?
That's
okay.
right. And within artificial intelligence, we are focused on a subset called computer vision. So AI is very good at taking large amounts of data, looking through it, creating a understanding of what's happening, and then to come up with a tool that can allow people to use that insight and that information to.
It develops an algorithm.
It develops an algorithm. I actually make it. The analogy I use is that AI that's burgeoning right now is basically the same thing as human beings. Meaning, when we're born, we have an algorithm that's blank in our brains, and as we go through life, we take in sights, sounds, smells, interactions, touch, and it informs our algorithm. Right. The simplest example people may think is a kid touches a hot stove, they go, "Ouch." But guess what? That just trained their algorithm. So through all of these interactions, this data that's coming in, these experiences, our algorithms get smarter and smarter and smarter, so that as we become adults, we're able to have, insights, intuitions. We're able to have a proper way of assessing things that are happening around us. We're trying to create the same type of system, but using computer vision technology, using video streams to allow the AI to see and learn what's happening in a particular space, so that it can do the following. It can monitor, it can detect when something happens, it can then set up an alert system, and then most importantly, it can preserve the evidence and the data, so that if there is something to be, if there's an action to be taken, we have the proof, we have the data there. The AI that we're trying to build, we call it a platform to detect anomalies, against vulnerable people. Now, what is an anomaly? An anomaly can be a variety of things. It can be somebody who is perpetrating violence on somebody else. An anomaly may be that this particular person that it's viewing might be exhibiting other types of behaviors that look violent, but maybe something that's specific to them. For example, a lot of special needs kids and adults, they will do stimming. They'll do hand flapping. They may even do injurious behaviors. So the AI can be trained to pick up and to differentiate between these different types of anomalies. And based upon that intelligence can make an alert to staff to say, go help this person, or alert other folks to say, hey, this staff member is hurting this person, go intervene. Our hope and goal is that we can do this in near real time. It would be fantastic if it could be, instantaneous, like a person standing there. But, the video has to be, viewed. It has to be then streamed into our system, processed, go to the algorithm in the cloud, and then once that happens, it comes back and then the alerts go out. We're hoping to get that turnaround to be about 5 to 10 minutes maximum. So if someone's hurt, injured, or some other anomaly has occurred, hopefully within a 5 to 10 minute window from when it occurred, an alert system will be sent out.
Now, I know nothing about how any of this works, but I'm almost thinking that I bet you could do it even faster at some point. As the artificial intelligence becomes stronger and more powerful, I think you're going to be able to do it within seconds.
100%. Your intuition is spot on, because the more data that we can feed into the AI system, the more experience that the AI can learn from, the better, A, the quality of the anomaly detection will become, and B, as our models and big companies like NVIDIA or Google or Microsoft further refine their systems, and we have faster GPUs that are in the cloud to process the algorithms, I'm hoping that time will come down dramatically. It would be great if it could be within a minute, right? But given the state of tech today,
I think it will be.
Yeah.
I think from my limited knowledge, but what I read, it sounds like that's where we're moving in that direction. And I'm so excited that you're doing this, and it's really needed. I had a client several years ago. Oh, this is now going back 10 years ago. And I knew one of the people from the neighborhood I grew up in, and she had a sister who was an adult sister who was living in a residential facility. And she was diagnosed with an STD. So that was how it was discovered that she was being sexually abused. And it was a terrible thing. And they sued the facility. And I didn't do that because that's not what I do. That's not my expertise
Right.
in personal injury. But another attorney did that and recovered funds for them. But that doesn't change what happened to her, and that doesn't make it better for her. And I wondered at the time, why are there not cameras everywhere? Like I never understood why there weren't cameras that were looking at our most vulnerable population.
It makes no logical sense. And the only conclusion that I've come to is it's money. And not necessarily the cost of deploying the cameras. It's the cost in terms of revenue lost when these institutions that are allowing and perpetrating this abuse are caught and maybe have liability.
I don't know. I have another explanation. I think it's almost feels too onerous to have to hold everybody accountable. I think accountability is a scary concept for people who are in power to hold people accountable.
Right, but that fear of accountability is driven by one thing. It's going to cost my pocket something if I get caught, right? Accountability doesn't mean anything unless there's a cost to it, a punishment for it. And so none of these folks, in our system here, the only way we punish is the perpetrator may go to jail. And I say may because the laws that are written to protect the vulnerable, they're
strong enough.
They're totally not strong enough. It's unbelievable that we will say that if you perpetrate a crime against an elder person or even against the police, the degree of the felony will be will be so high. Yet, if it's a vulnerable person, who by definition, vulnerable people cannot advocate for themselves, they may not be verbal, and many of them have the mental capacity of very young children. So I always think about it. What if you have a person who is 30 years old, and she is but has the mental capacity of an 8 or 9-year-old, right? Let's eliminate her physical age, right? And say now, if we had an 8 or 9-year-old girl who was sexually abused, who got an STD, who was showing physical trauma, what would the public think? What would the prosecutors think? What would the politicians think? And that's exactly what we have here. We have people who are at that maturity level. Their bodies may be older, but their mental capacity is at that maturity level, which by definition means that they cannot, advocate for themselves.
They can't consent. Report. They can't report.
They can't do any of this.
Well, you and I are their voices, and I have really dedicated my career to being the voice of the voiceless. And it's just such a privilege to sit here with you and to listen to your story and hear you tell the story and really hear about how it has propelled you to do something so positive for this really vulnerable community. So let's talk more about the platform.
Yeah. I just want to make one more point for your listeners, because you mentioned, the person that earlier, the young woman who,
was sexually
somehow
abused.
got the STD, and logic tells you how. There's an epidemic of abuse in this system, and frankly, after I've done my research for the last 6 months, my eyes have opened, my mind has been blown, and my heart has been broken.
Yes.
My son was abused and assaulted. I am going to 100% make sure that never happens to him again. However, I started Guardian Watch not necessarily for him. I started it for the rest of this community that even as we speak right now is being abused. There's someone right now being assaulted, sexually assaulted, physically assaulted, thrown downstairs, having their bones broken, been given black eyes. And the epidemic of abuse should shock the public. It should shock our politicians. But the politicians seem to look the other way. I'll give you some stats. It's been reported that 80% of the abuse that occurs in this criminal ecosystem doesn't even get reported. 80%. The Justice Center released a report that I believe as of November of 2024, they received close to 90,000 reports of abuse.
Where do you get that 80% statistic?
These are studies. I have the sources for all of this. I'm also a lawyer, so whenever I look up data or if I actually state data, I know that I have to do the citation for it. It may not be shepherdized, but I have the citations for it, and I can provide that to you afterwards.
Yeah, we can post it on the website.
Absolutely. So 80% of abuse is never reported. The Justice Center report stated that as of November of 2024, they had 90,000 complaints of abuse. So let's just do very simple math. If 80% of abuse is not reported, yet they got 90,000 reports, multiply that 90 times 5. So that means that in reality, 400 to 450,000 cases of abuse occurred out there, just in New York State, by the way. 400 to 450,000 abuse cases happened, only 90,000 got reported. Another fact that's actually right on point for your story of the young woman is disabled children are 5 times more likely to be sexually assaulted. Worse, 4 out of 5 disabled women are reported to have been sexually abused or assaulted.
That's a staggering statistic.
4 out of 5. If that doesn't break your heart, if that doesn't make you say, finally, our taxpayer money is being used to promote this epidemic of abuse. And we need to make sure our politicians know that this has to stop.
It does have to stop. And you speaking here today is helping with that. I hope. That is my hope, is us talking about this, that there will be somebody who cares, who has the power to do something. But we people, we taxpayers, we really are powerful, and we do have a strong voice. And I want everybody who's listening here today to really use your voice for this purpose.
I hope they do, because it seems like in this day and age, the only way that we can get proactive change, because, government is great at reactive, right? Let the harm happen. Let the person die. Let the person be abused. Oh, now we're going and maybe we'll look at what's going on, as opposed to thinking proactively, how can we put a system in place that will stop this from happening? How can we put investigative bodies in place that can stop this from happening? How can we not reward these institutions for this type of bad behavior?
We have police officers who wear body cams now.
Absolutely, yes.
That's another idea. Maybe staff should be wearing body cams.
Absolutely, I would be a big proponent of that. I mean, and the police officers with the body cams is a great example. When body cams were first introduced many years ago, all the police departments, all the police forces said,
outrage.
We don't want it. We don't want it. It's going to do this and that. It's going to not allow us to have effective policing. It's going to point the fingers at the wrong people. But guess what? I've now spoken to many law enforcement people, and I've seen articles, and I've seen interviews where they said, thank goodness we had the body cams, because now you can see the interactions that they have and who is actually at fault. And I think we're realizing that in the police force, it's not 100% that them are bad. There may be a few bad apples, 10, 15%. But what happens? The atrocities of those 10, 15% paint the whole force with a bad
It's
brush.
a skewed lenses that.
So in this case, if we
seeing.
had this type of video evidence, we would capture a lot more of this abuse happening. Maybe there would be a deterrent effect. Somebody would think twice about doing something like this because they know that there's an eye, a guardian that's watching them. And also, guess what? It might exonerate a few of these people who are falsely accused.
Correct.
So I don't see a reason why anybody should object, be it for privacy concerns or other concerns. It makes no sense.
I agree. And there's cameras everywhere. I mean, on the streets. I mean, when we're talking about privacy.
Right.
You go to a stoplight and there's a camera, and seeing your car, seeing what you're wearing, seeing your license plate, and
but even more on point, those are public places, so we don't have an expectation of privacy.
Correct.
Okay, so now let's take it to areas where there might be an expectation of privacy. Well, guess what? In daycare centers,
maybe there should be no expectation of privacy.
Well,
in those arenas,
in those arenas, we can. First of all, I don't think I know of any parent that we would approach and say, hey, your child or your son or your daughter is living in this particular institution. There's 8 people there. And this particular home has cameras in the common areas, not in their bedrooms and not in their bathrooms.
Well, but can't abuse happen in the bedrooms and the bathrooms?
Absolutely.
So how do we combat that?
It can. So the first step is to say common areas, they should be mandated to be covered. The second derivative of that would be, okay, Mr. Guardian and Mr. Parent, if you want your child or your offspring to have a camera in their bedroom, they should absolutely have the right to put it in their bedroom. I would say that would be the second step.
Okay, so that would be the guardian or the parent's prerogative.
Exactly. But at the very least...
But then you couldn't do that in the bathroom. But maybe any staff who accompanies someone to the bathroom has to have that body cam.
Yes. Look, my son was dragged across the living room of his residence by his genitalia.
Yeah, and with your permission, we'll post that video as well.
Right.
And I just want to be clear, because I don't know that we said it in the beginning, your son has a diagnosis of autism.
Yes, he does.
And his brand of autism is severely impacting his ability to move through the world.
Yes. He has very limited verbal skills. He is not able to advocate for himself. He is 100% reliant upon having a caretaker with him 24/7. So in his case, he was dragged by his genitalia across the living room, the common area of the residence, in front of other residents, in front of other staff members. Yet
nobody stopped it,
and nobody reported it until this whistleblower did it.
Right.
So
thank God for that whistleblower.
Yes, absolutely.
He deserves a lot of praise.
Well, what he got was he got fired, and he was told that he's going to be deported because they were pulling his work visa. And this was all done in a matter of a few weeks to try to, in my opinion, to try to get him to shut up and to get him out of the country so he could not be a witness.
And maybe retract his statement. Well, you can't retract the video.
Well, yeah, the video, that's what I'm saying. If the video did not exist, I don't know if this issue or my son's case would have come to light.
Right.
The video, we have New York State troopers who explicitly said to us, they are tired of going to Anderson and having to investigate and then have it go nowhere because there's no evidence that they can take to into a court of law. Because the victims, they're not competent to stand trial, to be standing up as witnesses, right? There's no other objective evidence.
Right.
But if there was video, it would be a whole different ballgame.
Right, which is where Guardian Watch AI comes into play here.
Exactly. And the applications for this technology, are multiple. We have a global video surveillance business, right? It's everywhere, like you just said, on the street corner, in government institutions, in all these places where a large amount of people gather, walk around, even in homes, What's going to be the future, especially given that we have now artificial intelligence and computer vision, is we're going to have a global video analytics market. And there's a big distinction. Video surveillance is just basically you have 100 cameras, it'll all feed into a control room, and you may have 4 or 5 people sitting at that desk trying to look at what's going on in each of these cameras.
Right. So it's prone to human error.
Human error and also capacity. How many video screens can one person look at the same time and gather, intelligence from that? Whereas now you can have an AI system that can be processing all 100 streams in near real time and being able to watch out for these specific, anomalies that may occur. And so let's talk about the use cases. Guardian Watch AI, to my heart, first and foremost, will be applied to the special needs community, right? We want to use this technology in the schools, in the residential homes, in any other area where, there's an interaction and, we want to be able to see and make sure that, these vulnerable people are being, dealt with properly. The other benefit of this is that we're building the platform so that there will be clinical insights that we can derive from this video data. And when I say clinical insights, if we can identify when somebody's experiencing, let's say, some type of sensory overload, right? Or they're having some type of reaction to a tangible danger that nobody else sees, but they see it, right? Or they have some type of escape protocol that they're going through, or there's a medical necessity or some type of medical need, and that can be computer vision and AI can do all of these things using things like pose detection, facial recognition, emotive detection, looking at the sounds that are emitted, the frequency, the pitch. It's called a multimodal approach to getting data in and then having the AI process that. AI can do all of these things very efficiently
and
very quickly. Exactly. Now, but where are the other applications? How about elder care? How about in nursing homes, assisted living facilities, home care? You hear all the time how people who are going into elderly people's homes to care for them are abusing them. Yeah. And then the elderly person may not be able to, again, advocate because they're vulnerable. They may not be able to contact the right people. And if they do, many times no one pays attention or they dismiss it, saying this person's just talking out of turn. Think of memory care units, people who have Alzheimer's, people who may wander off. All of these things are things that this computer vision system could help detect and could help analyze and maybe even predict going forward. Because if somebody exhibits certain types of actions, physical, vocal or other, the AI can say, wow, I've seen this in the past, and then the result was that they did this or that, then maybe we could predict if this person is going to have a meltdown or if this person is going to abscond or if this person is going to have some other type of issues. Then let's also apply this to large areas, large private spaces and public spaces, sports arenas. What if you're in a big stadium and you get hurt in a corner of it, but nobody's around to see that you are hurt and you're laying on the ground bleeding out? Well, guess what? If the camera's there and AI is watching you, it can alert the authorities and alert people to respond.
There is a part of this, Anil, as I'm listening to it, and you know that I absolutely love this idea and want to protect our vulnerable. But there's a part of this as I'm listening that harkens 1984 and Big Brother Watching. Remember that
Absolutely.
book?
Yep.
George Orwell. So that is kind of the criticism that I'm hearing in my head that you're going to hear. And what's your response to that? Do we want to create a dystopian type of environment where everybody's being watched all the time?
Right. So this is not everyone.
Okay.
Right. So we have to sort of compartmentalize where this is going to be applied. As you said earlier, if you're walking down the street, you really don't have an expectation of privacy. You know that you're being watched by a camera. You go into a lobby of a commercial building, cameras everywhere.
Right.
So there's no expectation of privacy there, right? In your home, you may have your own personal security system, and you're not going to deploy something like this over there because there's no need. There's no vulnerable person per se in your home. Or if there were, then it's up to you to decide, do I want this type of system there to watch and to protect this vulnerable person? But by definition, people who are vulnerable, they need this oversight. They need somebody.
They do need it.
Acting as a guardian.
There's no doubt.
As an objective observer. Because right now, in the current system that we have, we're failing.
It's not working.
It's not
and
working.
It's clearly
we're failing them.
Yes.
And frankly, we as a society, we as a people, we as a country we're going to be judged by future generations by how we treat our vulnerable. And right now, we're getting a failing grade. In my opinion, we're getting a failing grade. And this failing grade applies from the politicians' reaction. It applies to the industry that is servicing these folks. And it applies to us as citizens who are not demanding more, of our government, of our politicians, and also who are not demanding that the people who are doing this be held accountable. So if we do anything, if anything positive comes out of my son's abuse and experience, it will be that we will transform this so that it doesn't happen again to somebody like this in the future.
Right. You would have thought that we would have learned so much from past abusive situations that have been exposed over time, and it doesn't. You're right. We haven't made enough strides because if we had, this wouldn't have happened to your son.
And my son's case is not the first, right? Jonathan Carey was murdered at a state-run facility after he was found to be basically abused and neglected at Anderson, right? And the Jonathan Carey's law, Jonathan's law came out of that whole episode, and the Justice Center system came out of that whole experience. But that was back in 2000, 2004, I believe.
So for our listeners, can you tell us a little bit about Jonathan's Law? I'm not saying you're an expert in it, but...
Right. So my understanding, as I've read about what happened in that instance, was this poor boy was experiencing a lot of negative, I would say...
Reinforcement?
Maybe reinforcement, maybe there was an issue with his meds, maybe there was some staff abuse. I don't know. But I believe that the parents said to Anderson, give us the reports. Let us see what's happening with our child. They refused. And as a parent, I'm like, are you out of your mind that you're going to refuse? And it wasn't like Jonathan was a 25-year-old adult male. No, he was a child. And they were not given the information that they sought and they needed. So that's what Jonathan's Law basically said. The parents have a right to have access to this medical information, to any type of clinical information or therapeutic information that happens.
Or incident reports.
Incident reports, which is one of the key things of Guardian Watch, is to create an incident report with evidence.
Right. After
Jonathan left Anderson, he was placed in a state-run facility, and there he was unfortunately murdered. He was, if I remember the facts of the case, he was in a vehicle, and the people who killed him, the two staff members who were responsible for doing this, one of them basically pushed the seat forward and crushed him. So that I don't want to speak out of turn because I know that Jonathan's father went through hell, and I can't even imagine what he experienced. What his family went through. But that happened back in, the early 2000s. We're in 2025. Guess what?
25 years later, we haven't
moved.
The system
it's probably gotten worse.
We haven't moved forward.
Right, because the financial incentives are there to keep this industry from holding people accountable, right? There was a report that came out by OPWDD that stated that, for example, Anderson had something like 4 times the rate of abuse reports versus any other facility in OPWDD's system. My God. So again, it's all about, people reacting as opposed to saying, let's stop reacting and let's figure out what procedures, what people, what protocols we need to put in place so that this doesn't happen. We have to incentivize all the people in this ecosystem. Remember, right now it's a criminal ecosystem because a few people at the top, they're making bank. They're taking in close to $1 million salaries at nonprofits, by the way, which is always shocking to me, right? And then the frontline, direct service providers and professionals, they are being paid minimum wage.
Right.
There's a huge disconnect there.
Right.
The people who are doing the actual work day in and day out, they're basically getting the same wage that you'd get at a fast food restaurant, right? So are you going to be able to attract people who have a calling, who have a real desire to work in this industry? Probably not, right? And not to say that all the people who are working in the front line are bad. They're not. The whistleblower is a prime example of that. Somebody who saw what was going on, reported it up the food chain, but
got
was ignored.
Nowhere. Yeah.
And was ignored.
Yeah. So he had to take matters into his own hands.
He had to take matters into his own hand.
And thank God he did. Yeah. Yeah.
So, we have to really look at this from the perspective of we have to do an overhaul of the system. Maybe some people say burn it down or build it back up. I don't know exactly what the approach is, but I do know that we need to take specific substantive actions today.
So what do you want our listeners to do for this cause? What can they do? Because they're going to listen to this and they're going to wonder, what can I do to help?
Sure. So I'll talk about a variety of different things that I'm working on, which I could use a lot of help and input from your listeners. First and foremost, Guardian Watch itself needs video data to train the AI. Now, we already have a small group of parents, about 20 to 25, who are uploading videos, their personal videos of their children, and they're showing examples of when they're stimming or doing other types of sensory soothing movements. They maybe do hand flapping. They may be jumping up and down. They may be, saying, making statements. They're sending us those videos that we can train our AI on what, for example, is called a baseline behavior for a special needs person. Then we have another group of people. It includes people like therapists, caregivers, who are creating staged videos of actual violent encounters. I've created a few of those videos with some of these folks, whereby I will sit down at a table, pretend that I am like working with an iPad, and then that person will come over, grab it from me, we'll have a physical interaction, and then maybe they'll show that they're somehow, hurting me or hitting me. Obviously, we're not asking anybody to hurt or hit anybody,
right?
But you can create that scene,
Simulate it,
exactly. So that's another group of people who are helping us create video data to train our AI. Then we're talking to theater groups, actors, other folks who are professionals at this to see if they have, some desire to assist on this. So that's on the video data creation and the video and the training of the AI.
So if anybody listening is interested in helping you with creating the video data, how can they reach you?
Well, they can go to www.guardianwatch.ai. We have an interface that we're building. I think it's just about to be completed today, whereby you can register on the website. You'll be taken to a consent form that allows us to use your video for the training purpose. And once you sign the consent form, you're then allowed to upload through the website your videos. All of our videos are located in a secure container on Amazon Web Services. We are also getting to be HIPAA compliant, even though there's no need right now for that. We're going to make sure that our infrastructure is HIPAA compliant. And so you can upload as many videos as you'd like. And if that interface, for whatever reason, is not functioning for you on your system or your platform, my contact information is on the website, and you can reach out to me directly.
Okay, thank you for that.
Yeah.
All right. So you were going through what you need. One was video data. What's next?
We need for people to start calling the politicians, federal, state, and say to them, we're not going to stand for this anymore. And we don't need just, parents like me who have a special needs child. We need the general public to understand and to become our advocates as well. This is Autism Awareness Month, right? And we're seeing a lot of feel-good stories that are going out there.
And we're both wearing our blue.
Today. But as part of this, this awareness campaign, I hope that the general population, as they become more aware of this community, they realize that the feel-good stories are fantastic and I love watching them. But that's a small portion of what's going on with people who are afflicted with this type of, this neurodiversity. So, the feel-good stories are good, but realize that's maybe 5 or 10%. Even if it's 20% of the population, there's an 80% of the population that's nonverbal, that cannot advocate for themselves, that cannot alert somebody if they're being hurt or abused. They need to see what's actually happening out there, and then they have to, I hope they become outraged and enraged and speak and lend their voice to our parental community, to our community as well, and tell politicians, you need to do something about this. Right now, I believe, and by the way, this is not a Democratic or Republican thing.
No.
I think that I'd be shocked to see if anybody on either side of the aisle is not shocked and disgusted by what goes on here. And good, rational people want to make a difference and make a change. So to that end, for the last 5, 6, 7 years, legislation has been proposed in Albany, never got out of committee, proposed by Democratic politicians, proposed by Republican politicians, but it goes nowhere. Why? That's a very good question that needs to be answered. Right now, I believe there are 2 bills that are sitting in committee and are getting nowhere. And one is proposed by a assemblyman, and one has been proposed by a senator, a New York State senator. Why are these bills not being discussed? This is Autism Awareness Month. I would think logically, the legislature would want to address this and talk about it, have public hearings on it, hear the facts, hear the concerns, hear the pain of the parents and the outrage of the community. So please, if you can, start lending your voice because we're only going to make change if we can get the politicians to also get on board with this.
Correct. Anything else
Well,
that people can do to help, or that pretty much sums it up?
it's I think those 2 areas are going to be the most important. If we don't get legislation or some type of mandate to require these cameras to be in these homes, it's going to be a very tough slog going forward. We have, I believe we have 135,000 residents, and I'll have to verify that number. I read it in a particular memo, who are in these facilities, and I was shocked to learn that OPWDD, which is the state organization that is responsible for funding and providing the funding for this whole system, runs only 20% of them. The other 80% are run by nonprofits, right? So again, I go back to the point of why are these nonprofits set up in such a way that, the salaries of the people at the top are somehow unconscionable, yet the people in the front line, are barely being paid, enough to provide the quality of care that we need. I spoke to a union shop steward, as an example, who stated to me that they had one person who had, a medical event. They needed to have a feeding tube put in. And the staff where that person was being kept were not trained on it. And he objected and he complained to the organization that was running that institution. And they just said, no, we'll just show you, this and this and this. And he said it was an improper technique. And the organization said, after we train you, you need to sign that you've received this training and that, going forward, you'll be responsible. Well, he said to me, the minute I saw that, I knew what they were doing, right? If one of my people, and as a union steward, he said, if one of my people did the procedure incorrectly and that person had a negative event, who are they going to point the finger at? That person, because that person signed a document that said
They've been trained.
They've been trained.
Right.
He complained to the Justice Center. Investigation started. Whole thing was upended. All of a sudden, senior leadership started showing up at these residences to do the training and to show the training. And to this day, if I understand correctly, I haven't spoken with them in a while, to this day, they're still having to be on site. The senior folks who don't want to be there, right, they still have to come to help administer the feeding tube and to continue to train staff on how to do it. That's just a very small example of how this system is set up so that people who are making some ridiculous money, they just want to create a system that just keeps processing at the lowest cost possible so that they can somehow, extract, their salaries. Because remember, a nonprofit is every year, they're not supposed to make a profit. So every dollar that they can save, right, goes into their ability to get bonuses and to get, compensation. So, I think it's backwards. In my opinion, if I was a nonprofit and I had $1 million to spend, I would say I want 99%, if possible, of this $1 million to go and help the folks that it's targeting. Maybe I need 5% or 8% of that $1 million to take care of administrative staff, oversight, hire professionals for the administrative function. But the actual corpus of that money should be used, for the residents.
So we're coming to the end of our interview. And Anil, I ask everybody, all of my guests, this question. If you had a magic wand or a Superman cape and you could make anything happen, a wish come true, I think I know what it's going to be. What would it be?
Can you give me 2 wishes?
I will grant you 2 wishes.
My first wish is that my son was never abused. I'm not going to wish for him not having autism because that's him, and I love him regardless of his autism diagnosis. But that would be my first wish. My second wish would be put me in charge, and I will overhaul this system from the ground up. I would go in and day out and see the operations of these institutions, look at how staff is trained, how staff interact with the folks in this industry, see where the oversight is, where there's no oversight, make sure that the staff are incentivized to engage in proper behavior, proper interactions, incentivize everybody throughout the ecosystem to make sure that we can create what I call a virtuous ecosystem. You have to be able to pay people a living wage. You have to be able to pay a rate that attracts good quality, people who have a mission, who have a desire, who have a calling to be in this industry. And then you also need people above them, managers. You need BCBAs, you need clinicians, you need other folks who can also come and look at it from a healthcare perspective. This is not an impossible thing to achieve. It's almost laughable to me that there's so much common sense that could be applied here to address these problems and to address these issues that I have to believe that people are willfully disregarding, the common sense issues here for other reasons. And we've already alluded to what those other reasons could be. But every person I talk to, be it a parent, be it law enforcement, be it somebody else who is shocked and reach out to me about this, the first question they ask me is, why aren't there cameras in the home?
Right.
And then they ask me, well, didn't this whistleblower report this? The answer is yes. Why wasn't that report made, broadcast everywhere? Why did it stop at certain levels? So all of these logical, common sense approaches, they're not being applied. They're not being utilized. And because they're not being done, because we are a reactive society, we need to see somebody get raped, killed, assaulted before somebody will say, oh my God, that's so bad. Our hearts and prayers are with you. But then they go away. That's reaction. I want proaction. I want people to go in and say from the beginning, if we're going to set this system up, this is how the system has to be set up from the ground level. Create a strong foundation and then build your house on top of that. And if we don't have that approach, we're never going to solve and stop this abuse from continuing.
Anil, I have so much admiration for you and what you're doing. And I'm so excited to follow Guardian Watch AI, and see how this moves forward. And I think it's going to be great. And I think you are going to be heard.
I hope so. And I look forward to, everybody out there helping and helping to protect this community.
Yeah. Thanks again for coming, Anil.
Thank you,
I hope
Tracey.
you come back and update us on how things are going.
Absolutely.
Thank you.